listening to the Cross-Check NHL Show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Andrew Berkshire and Mary Clarke.
Hello and welcome to the Cross-Check NHL Show. Thanks for making the Cross-Check NHL Show your first listen every Tuesday and Friday. We're free and available on all platforms, now including YouTube. My name is Mary Clarke, staff writer for The Win, and you can follow me on Twitter at Mary C. Clarke. I'm here with Andrew Berkshire, NHL analyst for the Montreal Gazette and host of Game Over Montreal and the SDPN, and also Game Over International, who you can follow on Twitter at Andrew Berkshire. On this Friday edition of the Cross-Check, well, Canada's dominant run through the Olympics has culminated in a gold medal as the women's team has enacted its revenge on the United States. Though Canada 100% deserved to win on Wednesday night's game, USA Hockey has some serious questions to answer about their competence running a hockey team. Plus, in men's hockey news, both the United States and Canada have surprisingly bowed out of the Olympic quarterfinals as neither country will medal this year in Beijing. Also, Sidney Crosby has 500 career goals, and of course he scored it against the Flyers. Because sports is nothing but pain to me. So, Andrew, before we start off today's show, how you doing?
I mean, I'll start off with an apology. We're recording a little bit late because I lost track of time. I will say that it is a legitimate excuse. I didn't fall asleep this time. We had last week in Montreal this huge thaw that happened, and we had huge banks of snow that all melted down, and then we had a snap freeze down to minus 33, which is, I don't know, like minus 20 or something in Fahrenheit. So we had these huge drifts of ice all over. And today it's like +5, which is, I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. It's warm. It's above freezing. And so everything's starting to melt, and it's pouring down rain.
Oh,
so everything's like flooding. So I took like my garden hoe and a spade and just like created a channel to drain from our backyard and our parking lot down to where the drain is with my wife this morning after dropping off the kids at daycare. And then by the time we were done, I was like, oh shit. I saw the message from Mary. I was like, are you asleep again? Please don't be asleep again. I was like, no, I'm going to go. I just got to get out of my wet pants.
Some of us are super busy, Andrew. We've got meetings. I've got work. We got recordings. So thankfully, this should be, I don't know about you. I don't know what your schedule is because we just jumped into this recording so I can make a meeting before everything. But I don't know if this is your last day of, Olympic craziness because like I said, all right, it is the same for me too because there were a lot of developments that happened. And we'll start with the biggest one because we both predicted it. But Canada did win gold in the women's hockey Olympic tournament. Absolutely 100% deserved. They were just such a good team. But I'll give the floor to you, Andrew, if you want to do some sort of victory lap, because I have a lot to say about this. But I wanted to hear it, at least from a Canadian perspective, because this felt inevitable to me as an American. And I don't know if that felt the same to you, or at least, Canadian fans, because you never know what's going to happen in a USA Canada game, but this felt inevitable. It felt inevitable when they hit the post in the first 5 minutes and on a wide open.
As soon as that happened, right? Like as soon as that happened, I saw like 50 different people on my timeline post the picture of the post from Sochi, and
the post is a Canadian agent. It always has been a Canadian agent.
Can't deny it.
Yeah.
Carpenter hit the post late in the third too, as well, I believe, or midway through the third. So
but take
the
your
post
victory
was
lap.
doing its work. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I'm not like, this isn't a situation I think that has happened in a lot of Olympics where there's been like more animosity between Canada and the USA. For some reason this year, I don't know if it's just like what we've all been going through, or just like between like the garbage that's going on here with the quote unquote freedom rally or the like insurrection in the United States in last year. But it seems like Americans and Canadians on my section of social media are just not at each other's throats. And while the game was intense and there were some moments that got a little bit chippy, Marie-Philippe Poulin with a little bit of a knee there at the end of the game, it just didn't seem like there was that much fighting. Maybe it's because it was in the middle of the night too, and the people who were staying up because they just really enjoy watching this tournament. But it seemed like there was just this mutual respect this year. And at the end of the game, my thoughts were like, it felt the whole tournament that it was inevitable for Canada. I think this is the best team they've ever put together, both in terms of the depth of the roster and the style of play that they're putting forth. Like, they just are so aggressive offensively. They're so fun to watch. I'm just blown away by how great they are. And there's so many good stories coming out of it. Like Sarah Nurse, the first Black woman to ever win an Olympic gold in women's hockey, led the tournament in scoring, broke Haley Wickenheiser's
broke the record.
like in Black History Month. It's phenomenal. And then I look at the USA and they held them to 3 goals. And like, yeah, sure, Canada sat back a little bit, but they actually made a game out of it when it looked at the beginning like Canada was going to run them out of the building. So I just have tremendous respect for both sides. And yeah, it's another heartbreaker for the United States, but at the same time, I think they were just shortchanged a little bit by their coaching staff this year. And Canada had so much preparation going into this time. I think they were together for 2 years, like this coaching staff and essentially this roster. And they've been like fitness training together for months during the isolation and centralization they've done. Like, it just seemed like an unstoppable force, and the United States wasn't quite an immovable object. Sorry, I'm fumbling over my words, but I loved it. I'm super happy for our women, but I have tremendous respect for our silver medalists across the border because, I mean, also they lost Decker too, right? So like, it's just it was a fantastic tournament, and I know that Americans are disappointed with how it went, but I'm proud of both sides. That's how I feel.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And you're right. There doesn't seem to be animosity, at least between the fans. The players, I think, are a different story. Because did you see like Natalie Spooner's quote where she's like, "We want to crush them," or whenever
Yes.
we play. And
God, I
she
love
was,
Nat Spooner.
and she was like, and she was very noticeable in that game last night. Like, I noticed her multiple times, got like multiple scoring chances. I'm like, of course she is. As soon as like she said that quote. Like of course she was going to be fired out of a cannon, but even though the players have animosity for each other, you're right. Like, I don't know if it's the state of the world. We're in a different place mentally than we were in 2018. It could have been because it was late at night, and I think we're all maybe just burnt out. I don't know. But you're right. Like, it was nice that like it felt like for the first time I could actually like I always have respected the Canadian hockey team's, talent. But this year I was like, man, they're actually kind of likable and I hate it. I
Until
love it.
Mary
Yeah.
Clarke scores 2 goals and then throws out a knee.
Yeah, like, well, but she's an incredible hockey player. Probably the best Canadian hockey player in the world. Like, she shows up for big games. She scored in like she scored the game winner, I think, at every single gold medal that she's won or
Yes.
something to that
And
effect.
she scored in every gold medal game.
Yes.
7 goals in 4 gold medal games, 3 golden goals.
And she's not like, I know they call her Captain Clutch, but this is just who she is. This
It
is
is.
100% who she is. And I hope Canada fans know that they are so lucky to have somebody like that on their team and are be able to root for her. And she's what, 30? I want her to retire, but I don't think she's going to. She's probably going to continue to play and continue to be just as good as she's always been. And I hope you guys realize how lucky you are to have somebody like that, because once it's gone, you like just enjoy it, because once it's gone, like, I don't know, things could be different for Canada. Who's to say? But I mean, you guys have such great talent, and you mentioned Sarah Nurse. What an incredible story too. Like,
know,
I
right?
can't help but feel so happy for her to like do this on the biggest stage and win gold as the first Black women's hockey player at the Olympics, and like, or at least to win a gold medal. And like, it's the stories around Canada are so good, and I guess we'll transition to the United States because I wish the United States could match them. Because like Canada was so dominant throughout the tournament. They, at least from this tweet that I pulled up from Alyssa tweeting, they had 57 goals from 14 different skaters. Every skater recorded at least 1 point. They had a 94% save percentage, a 17% shooting percentage, a 41% power play, and a 90% penalty kill. They were just dominant across the board. And then you look at the Americans, who have a lot of talent. Sure, they lost Brianna Decker, and that was a really unfortunate situation. But I don't know if she would have made a difference in the way this game started, at least. And we mentioned the problems with, American coaching. on a previous episode, and how I was kind of concerned that there was a possibility for an upset here, that somebody would upset the United States en route to the gold medal game, because I didn't think that was unfounded either. They didn't, they didn't look their best. They were, they had a lot of shots like on the outside. They weren't doing a lot in the interior. Their defensive game was struggling. Their power play was abysmal. There's just so many things. They benched so many players. Like, where was Jinsey Dune, Grace
I know.
Sumwinkle, Caroline Harvey? They all played too little. Like, I don't remember the name of the coach for the United States, but he shortened the bench dramatically in every single game, essentially. And that's not what you want to do against a roster as stacked as Team Canada's. You want to bring your best players and you want to have them competing against the best. And I get, shortening the bench in situations is what you do as a coach, but you don't shorten a bench like that for the entire game. It was frustrating to watch as an American because it felt like this team was being held back by their coaching decisions. And it almost feels like in 2018, they almost won in spite of their coaching decisions. Which isn't to take anything away from that game, because that was an incredible game in 2018, and it was a well-deserved win, and it felt really good. But I mean, we're going to talk about it with the men's tournament, but USA has a coaching problem. It 100% has a coaching and management problem, and I hope they learn the right lessons from this, because the USA and Canada are at the top of their field in terms of women's hockey, but it's clear Canada has outclassed the United States, at least in terms of talent development and coaching.
Well, recent history anyway.
At least, right? Yes, at recent history. But the turnaround is wild, because it really felt like 2018, like 2014 and 2018 were very this was competitive, don't get me wrong, but they were they felt, not to say
equal
on the
footing
same,
kind of thing.
Yeah,
I will say, Canada in 2018 was almost in the same situation as the US now, where sure, they made a game of it, but I think it was more on talent than strategy. And in that game, Canada did the same thing that the US did. They essentially played 3.5 defensemen that entire tournament. And by the end of it, against the United States, they were just gassed. They couldn't hold together. And the US were the better team in 2018 because of it. I mean, Megan Mickelson was phenomenal, but playing with a broken hand, and then they had 3 other defensemen essentially playing the entire game. It's the same situation as the United States find themselves in now, except for they don't have an injury to one of their players on defense that has them even worse. So I
saw on Twitter this morning, not to interrupt you, but I saw on Twitter this morning that goaltender Alex Cavallini had a torn MCL earlier in January and still played in big games in Beijing. And I'm not blaming her for the loss, but I think the United States left some of their best players on the bench, left some of their best players at home.
Yeah, it's not like Maddie Rooney can't stop the puck.
No, exactly. I get wanting to trust your veterans, but it just was poor decision making all around. And I really hope they learn the lessons here, because
I think they will, Mary, because these teams, it seems like it's always one team pushes up a little bit and then the other team goes up, and they just raise each other up, right? Because there's this constant battle, and Canada happens to win more often at the Olympics, and the United States wins more at the World Championships. So it's just it doesn't really matter which one is more important to you, right? I think the Olympics gets more eyes, but there's more World Championships. So I think this is a situation where the United States maybe was taught a lesson, just like Canada was in Pyeongchang. Maybe too many veterans, not enough young players, not enough speed in their game, a little bit too passive, a little bit too defensive. Now we're going to see, I think the next tournament, we're going to see a different United States team that takes it to another level. And then Canada's going to have to try to match that. And that's what's so fascinating about this rivalry. But can we talk about one really positive thing about the US team?
Yeah.
Because I didn't know this until the game started and they mentioned it on the broadcast, but Abby Roque is the first Indigenous woman to play in the Olympics for women's hockey. She was incredible in this game. 10 shots on goal. I thought she was the United States' best player. Maybe Hillary Knight was a little bit better, but I thought she was brilliant. 23 minutes, 16 seconds of ice time. She, like, every time she was on the ice, she was making a difference. And like, to me, that is a fantastic story. I want to see more of Abby Roque going forward.
Yeah, she was great. She really found her stride towards the end of the tournament, I thought. But
only 24 years old.
Yeah, I mean, she's got a long way to go in her, Olympic career for sure. And that was definitely a really fun story. I knew that coming into the tournament with all the Olympics prep I did and stuff, but it's a great story. It's really awesome to see, women of color get the recognition and this stage. And like I said, I'm circling back to Sarah Nurskin because that's such a good story. Like,
it is.
Like, I can't be mad at Canada. They're so likable, and it's just, I don't know. I don't have the energy to be mad at them. I'm more mad at the coaching staff of the United States for, hampering and holding back a team that probably could have pushed Canada even more. The scoreline was 3-2, and it was closer at the end than the score suggested because, Canada took a 3-0 lead basically halfway through the game. And the United States didn't look as engaged as they should have. And it wasn't until, Hillary Knight scored that penalty kill goal near the end of the second when, the United States really found their legs and really started pushing hard. But, I mean, it was a great tournament all around. No one, I think, is going to say Canada was undeserving. They shouldn't, because they're the best Canada team I've ever seen. Men's and women's, like 100%. This team was flat out dominant through the entire tournament and absolutely deserved gold medal. And I just hope the United States learns their lesson before 2026, or Canada's going to get further apart in this rivalry, and we'll be kind of back to the mid 2000s in terms of where we're at in the Olympics. But we're going to move on from the women's tournament to talk briefly about the men's tournament, because I don't think any of us were expecting both US and Canada to drop out of the quarterfinals in the men's tournament and not medal at all. So we're going to talk about that coming up right after this. This is the time of year that I've pretty much given up on all of my New Year's resolutions, but not this year. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. Have you tried the Puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, they're not just a protein bar, they're a treat. And they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite with some incredible flavors. Yummy cinnamony churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie, so good. They're going to be your new favorite. All Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Yes, Puffs included. 100% real chocolate. It's low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bars with these. They are better. A typical candy bar can be anywhere from 200 to 300 calories. Go to Built.com and scroll down to the macros chart. You'll be blown away. High protein, low calorie, high fiber, low carb. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams sugar, 4 grams net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually has 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. Try flavors such as mint brownie, coconut, coconut almond, and new for this month, white chocolate cookies and cream. They're all delicious, and new flavors are coming out all the time. If they think a flavor might be good, they'll make it. It'll be delicious, and it will be good for you. At Built Bar, they're all about the taste. They make taste delicious first, and then figure out how to make it healthy. I don't know how, but they pull it off every time. So go to Built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off of your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, Andrew. So more Olympics talk, because that's kind of the big thing that's dominated the conversation. And I would have put Jack Eichel in here, but he didn't do anything in his Golden Knights debut. And also it was happening during the women's hockey game. So I didn't get to see much of it. So we're going to bypass that because he didn't do anything notable. Still great to see him on the ice, though. But we're going to keep talking Olympics with both Canada and the United States men's teams are out of the tournament. They will not medal. They both got knocked out in the quarterfinals. The US lost 3-2 to Slovakia in a shootout. In the early morning, late night, or wherever you are. And then Canada the next morning lost 2-0 to Sweden. And there are two teams facing two different issues. I guess kind of the same issue. It basically all stems back to coaching. Because there were some decisions made. But yeah, this will be a tournament that doesn't feature Canada or the US for a medal for the first time since like 2006 or something like that. It's been a handful of years. This isn't the first time it's happened, but it's been a handful of years since, we haven't seen USA and Canada in the men's tournament. So do you have any thoughts, Andrew? Did you watch the men's game? You probably did because you're covering all of Canada, but still, like, what are your thoughts from that game? Because we'll get to the United States in a few minutes, but I wanted to ask you about Canada first.
I watched a bit, but frankly, it was a super boring game. Canada only got 22 shots in the entire game. I think the US, or not the US, sorry, Sweden only got 26. Canada didn't bring enough offense to the table. Like, I liked some of the aspects of their roster that they brought, but overall, it just wasn't that impressive of a showing. It seemed like they didn't know what they were there for, and I don't know. To me, this is much more fun because we get to see teams that we don't normally see make it this far. Like, there's a possibility, a very real possibility, that Slovakia could win men's hockey gold. That is so cool. I hope that's what happens. Although I would very much settle for Finland Sweden in the final because that's a fantastic rivalry as well.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I can't bring myself to care that much about the men's tournament this year. To me, for men's hockey, it has to either be like an age restricted best on best or an actual best on best, or else it just doesn't matter to me because I look at it as like the United States and Canada, their best players are all going to be in the NHL. And everybody who's on this team is either a former NHLer who can't make it in the NHL anymore, or sat out most of the year with an injury and is hoping to get a contract at a late age, like Eric Stahl or Brian Giunta last Olympics. And like Russia has a bunch of actual really good hockey players from the KHL who stay in Russia. Like last Olympics, Kaprizov was the guy who scored the gold medal winning goal. There's no Kaprizov on Canada or the United States. There's young players. That's kind of exciting, but overall, neither of them went with a full-on youth movement, which would have been much more fun. So it's hard for me to get into those games as a fan, but as an observer, I think it's far easier to get into it cheering on teams like Slovakia or Finland or Sweden, who rarely
Or
get a chance to do this. Or
Didn't it?
Denmark,
Yeah, it was like
yeah, or
Denmark until they
Switzerland,
got knocked out.
Not Russia though, because I
No.
just they're the heavy favorite, and also I don't believe Russia should be able to compete in the Olympics at all.
Yeah, that's a whole different conversation. There's a lot
Yes.
of stuff about Russia, but yes, I agree.
We
At least
digress,
for now.
but Russia, get out of here.
Yeah, but I mean, you make good points. I think I differ with you on the fact that the United States brought a lot of youth, but they didn't use them, Andrew.
Yeah, I know.
Where was Matty Beniers? Where was he? Where was he in overtime? Like,
The
or on,
shootout
the power
is
play.
the
Where was
crazy
he in the
one.
shootout? Where was he in the
Yeah.
shootout? United States. What are we doing here? It's the same thing. Like I said with the women's team, the United States is woefully underperforming because they don't have the right coaching. I don't even know who these people are that are coaching these teams. No offense, because isn't it David Quinn for the United States men's?
I think so, yeah.
And I don't follow women's hockey as much as I should, because there's a lot else going on in my life. But I know that the same coaching problems that followed the United States into the Olympics were coaching problems they've had for at least a year plus now. But it also, it showed up on the men's side too. Like, what's the point in bringing these players if they're not going to play in the big important moments? This is when you want your young stars to have their moment. I mean, TJ Oshie had his big, TJ Sochi moment.
TJ Sochi, I remember that.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. I mean, like, that was like, it feels like that was the last time the United States did anything positive in a men's hockey tournament. And that was like, it feels like forever.
Was that 2014?
I think so.
Yeah. I mean,
that checks out.
Let's face it, that's also the last time that there was professional hockey at the Olympic level, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
But it's disappointing. I mean, I didn't watch the game completely. I had turned it on and then I had gone to bed when the United States was winning in the third period because, I need my sleep. We got a lot of stuff to do. I got a lot of stuff to do, and I needed sleep. I, needed to catch up on some, I need to be well rested for the last leg of this week coming into the women's gold medal game. And then I woke up and saw the discourse and I was like, what are we doing here, Team USA? Like, what's the point? And he didn't even have any answers either. He had no real good answer for why Maddie Beniers wasn't, in the shootout. It made no sense. And this to me, at least on the United States thing, feels like hockey men gonna hockey men. And
Yeah.
it's very unfortunate that, because like coming into the tournament, I didn't have any real hopes for the United States, because you never know with a group of like bunch of college kids, older veterans, you never know how it's going to go. And then they surprised me by, beating Canada, going undefeated in the round robin tournament and looking as strong as they did in certain respects. So I had hoped that at least make it, to the medal rounds. And, I didn't think gold was really, on the table for them in terms of like just where they were at with the strength of the competition around them. But to not medal at all is such a huge disappointment after going undefeated in the round robin and beating Canada in the way that they did. I know that game didn't mean anything in the long run, but like you beat your biggest rival and then you don't medal out of that. And Canada also doesn't even make it to the medal rounds either. It's just a huge disappointment. And it sucks that USA hockey coaching is just, put on a terrible show in these Olympics. Like it really is.
Put a bow on it all. We can circle back to the women's tournament, and the coach of the women was asked after the game about like Jinsey Dunn and shortening the bench so much. And he basically responded, you wouldn't be asking that question if we'd won, which is like, well, maybe you would have won if you didn't make the dumb decision. No coach gets second guessed when they won. It's such a stupid deflection. And I had Erica Ayala from Locked On Kraken on Game Over International this morning.
Because she's in Beijing covering the games. Shout out to her.
And she was fantastic on the show, as you expect her to be.
Mm-hmm.
But she told us that apparently this coach had said, like before the tournament, that he didn't think it was important to practice special teams. And what killed the United States in this tournament?
And they also didn't bring a taxi squad of all things. Oof. That I saw that coming into the games, and I was like, this is like a Chekhov's gun situation of like, I see this now and it's gonna come back in like a very opportune moment and strike. And even though the taxi squad wasn't, really needed outside of, them, needing a replacement for Decker, it still speaks to the incompetence of American hockey at this tournament, men's and women's side. And
USA hockey has got a long way to go. I mean,
they do.
They were in charge.
Yeah, they've had a long way to go for some time now. But it's just incredibly frustrating to see, like at least the men kneecapped out of a medal. The women won silver, and that is still an incredible accomplishment. Nothing to be ashamed of. Like they didn't, lose gold, and have to settle for silver. They won silver. They absolutely played like their hearts out in the tournament. And, it's just disappointing, I think, on all levels to see what could have been had there been better coaching. Sure, they may not have, the men may not have won a medal and the women may not have won gold had there been better coaching, but, it still sucks that this is the dominant storyline instead of, how fun the games were and how awesome the tournament was. So we're going to move on from Olympic hockey, and we're going to talk about Sidney Crosby because, I don't know, that was the only other thing I could think of, and this is just a show of misery for me. So we're going to speak on Crosby scoring his 500th career goal coming up right after this.
Hold on, let me put my Penguins hat on.
Hey, no. We're going to ad break now, Andrew. You can't do this. It's ad time. All right. Football season might be over, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, and player performance props to where the next coach is getting fired, betonline.net is the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, do you really have a Penguins hat? No, you don't. Okay, I had to scroll away from the screen for a second. All right, good, because that was going to be very disappointing. So yes, Sidney Crosby scored his 500th career goal. This is the only thing I could think of for this segment because it was 2 a.m. and I wanted to go to bed before this podcast. So I know that there could be other stories to talk about, but I wanted to, give kudos to Sidney Crosby for, even though I don't sound like I'm giving him kudos, I absolutely am. Sidney Crosby is an incredible hockey player. It's great that he scored his 500th career goal. There was absolutely no doubt he was going to score it against the Flyers earlier this week, because that's just how it is. Sidney Crosby has terrorized the Flyers his entire career. And that goal not only was his 500th career goal, it was his 50th career goal against the Flyers, which is the most he's scored against any team in the NHL. It was
Fabulous.
it was in the Penguins' 50th game of the season, and it happened on Jagr's 50th birthday. As you know, Jaromir Jagr, pretty famous Penguin. So the stars
And
aligned.
Flyer.
Well,
And
yeah,
Flyer.
he played like one season with the Flyers, but he's most known
Was it
probably
only
for
1
his
year?
maybe 1 or 2. It was a very short time. It was great to have him there, but he's most known as a Penguin.
Yeah.
So the stars aligned completely for this to happen, and there was no way it wasn't going to happen. I knew it, coming into the game. I said it on Twitter that, believing otherwise is an exercise in futility, because that's just how it goes. If that really is just how it goes, and especially because the Flyers, since the pandemic started, basically have, done everything they've can to make their friends miserable. So of course Crosby was scoring the goal on Tuesday, and I'm glad he did it in front of home fans, because I don't think he would have gotten the respect he deserves if it was in front of Philadelphia fans. A, the building would have been like completely empty, and B, they probably would have booed him because the season is going so poorly in Philadelphia. I know that previously, when who was it? Did Mario Lemieux, did he have some sort of, I don't know, this is before my time, but the Penguins, the Flyers fans in past have applauded, Penguins players for, recovering from injuries and, coming back from illnesses and stuff. So I'm not slighting Philadelphia fans, because I know that in our history, we've done good things, but considering how bad the Flyers have been this year, I wouldn't have been surprised if there would have been so many boos for Sidney Crosby, because that's just the environment that's happening right now in Philadelphia. But bringing at least back to Crosby, what a career he's had. It almost feels like he should have reached 500 a long time ago, just because how impactful he's been. But he's not like Alex Ovechkin, a pure scorer. He can score a lot. He's a great scorer, but he excels in all levels of the game. And it was a really awesome moment. It was really funny also that Evgeny Malkin was the only one to have a primary, he was the primary assist and the only
How
assister.
fitting is that? You kind of wish that Letang had the other assist, right? Because it's that trio that's been the core of the Penguins.
Yes, but it was the most fitting thing you could possibly ask for, I think, as a Penguins fan. You beat the Flyers that game, even though the Flyers took a lead. The Flyers collapsed and lost in overtime. So Penguins fans are already riding high on the fact that they beat the Flyers, and then of course Sidney Crosby scores his big goal, and you get to celebrate. So it was the perfect complete package probably for Penguins fans, and I much like Marie-Philippe Poulin, I respect Sidney Crosby, but God, do I hate him. But I respect him. I love watching him play. He's a fantastic player and one of the best we'll ever see of this generation. And, I hope Penguins fans, much like Canada, I hope they know how lucky they are to have somebody like him. Because for a while, it wasn't looking good for that franchise. And then his presence completely turned around the franchise and made it into, one of the best the NHL has. So, I don't know if you have any other words to say on Crosby, because, I probably have more to say because I have a long history with him. And I never was endeared to him growing up. He scored the gold medal goal for Canada in the Olympics. So it's just been a very miserable week for me in terms of bringing up Olympic pain. We've had some good moments though in the United States, but at least on the hockey side, all I can think of is Sidney Crosby and Marie-Philippe Poulin. Great hockey players, but God, please leave me alone. Please stop tormenting me. I can't do this anymore. But I think my soul has been broken enough over the years. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on Crosby?
Yeah, I think what you were talking about, you felt like it should have happened sooner with Crosby hitting the 500 goal mark. I feel like we're at a point now where we all forget that Crosby missed the equivalent of over 2 seasons due to injury in his prime years. started by Davis Steckel's dirty hit that I, to this day, say it's total BS that it was an accident. And then the fact that the Penguins allowed him to play the next game and he got crunched by Victor Hedman. And then they thought it was a concussion for a long time, and it was, but also he had a broken neck that they just didn't diagnose for like 2 years. Like, Sidney Crosby's career hung in the balance of stupidity for a long time, and he essentially scored through his prime about 0.56 goals per game and missed something like 165 games through his prime years, which is nuts. Like, he could theoretically, if he had been healthy throughout his career, we'd probably be talking about like 600, 650 goals right now.
Yeah.
Which is, of course, not the same level as Ovi, but the fact is nobody in history is on the same level as Ovi.
Yeah, they're two different players. I mean, I know the comparisons still are kind of there and, were at least at the beginning of their careers because, that's how it always works in hockey. But they're two incredible players that have two different skill sets and will be remembered, for different things, but be remembered as incredible hockey players at the end of the day. And that's what Crosby is. And I know that his time with the Penguins is coming to an end in the near future. It's at least more tangible than it has been in the past. And, the Penguins are really good this year and they're at least, contenders for, a top spot in the East, or at least, a top spot in the Metro. They've been really good after the first couple months of the season. And, I was predicting the Penguins would, drop off a cliff soon, but they haven't. And part of that has been, Sidney Crosby's leadership, but also their, next man up mentality. But that all stems, from what Crosby brings to this Penguins team. And it's really been incredible. I'm sad that we missed so much time with him, and with all the injuries, because you never want to see a player injured, and what Crosby's had to go through over his career, it could have stopped his career. It really could have, and we're lucky to have seen him play for as long as we have, and here's to at least a handful of more years with him. And I don't want him to win another Stanley Cup because he's had enough. But if he can go out at least on some sort of high note at the end of his career, that'd be great because he absolutely deserves it. He's a hell of a hockey player. Just please stop being a thorn in my side, please. All right, so that'll at least end our hockey talk. We're going to switch to our pop culture segment that we do every episode. To round out a pretty short episode because some of us have stuff to do, but I think we've covered all that we have needed to cover. And like I said, it's been all Olympics all the time, and I wanted to spend the majority of the hockey time talking about the Olympics because there have been some big news, and I needed to get some feelings out. So we'll move on to our pop culture segment right after this. This episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing only the brands their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. RockAuto.com is a family business serving auto parts customers online for 20 years. They have everything from engine control modules and brake parts to tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. Whether it's for your classic or daily driver, get everything you need in a few easy clicks delivered directly to your door. The RockAuto.com catalog is unique and remarkably easy to navigate. Quickly see all the parts available for your vehicle and choose the brands, specifications, and prices you prefer. Best of all, prices at RockAuto.com are always reliably low, and the same for professionals and do-it-yourselfers. Why spend up to twice as much for the same parts? Go to RockAuto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. RockAuto.com. All right, filling out the final segment of our episode today for the week is our pop culture segment. So I'm just going to briefly mention, by the time you guys hear this tomorrow, most likely, I will be playing the sequel to one of my favorite video games in the last, 5 to 10 years, Horizon Forbidden West. Game looks absolutely gorgeous on PlayStation 5. I've tried not to look up too much about it because I want to, savor all the visuals and stuff and see all the new stuff for myself when I get there. But I've had to, sneak a little bit of a peek at certain, landscapes and stuff, and it looks absolutely gorgeous. I'm ready to get my face melted off with PlayStation 5 graphics. I'm looking forward to not caring about sports for a handful of days, because I feel like sports is all I have cared about over the last 2 weeks. So it'll be nice to have a good break, dive into an open world game. If you're a fan of the first one, everything I've seen, at least from reviews, basically says it improves on a lot from the first game. And so if it's, more of that open world goodness you want, the game's going to have it. And I'm really excited to play it. But what about you, Andrew? What have you got for us?
I mean, I haven't had much time really to get into
fair.
the pop culture stuff. I have been watching Peacemaker with my wife, and that's been pretty good. I mean, it's James Gunn. It's as expected, pretty much. It's like absurd, a little bit gory, and then it has like a heart to it, which is always good. John Cena is surprisingly decent at acting. The intro to the show is an all-timer, choreographed dance number, which is stupid and hilarious. Other than that, the Doctor Strange trailer has been like dominating my thoughts over the last couple of days since the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It looks so intense. I am very ready for more Wanda Maximoff after WandaVision.
Yeah, her like quote where she's like, you mess with time and I
And
do
become
it,
the
like, and be the
hero.
hero, and I do it and become the villain. I'm like, go off.
Yeah, and that doesn't sound fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can tell she's going to go a little bit nuts, but she's right.
Yeah. And I mean, good for her. Good for her. And you're right. We didn't talk about that trailer because it happened like the Super Bowl had started and it was like either right before the Super Bowl, right at the beginning. We didn't talk about that. We didn't talk about the Lord of the Rings Amazon TV show teaser trailer thing. I've only watched the Lord of the Rings movies and obviously the Hobbit movies. I've read some of the books, but I don't know, the lore. But I think it looks interesting. I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm obviously all here for more, high fantasy TV. I should watch, Wheel of Time because that is right in my wheelhouse. But it looks neat. I hope that, I hope that's good for, the sake of Lord of the Rings fans, because we don't hear about them on the same level as like, Star Wars or Marvel fans, but they have a very rabid fan base, but they are intense from what I have seen. So, I hope things are good. I'll probably check it out because I really enjoy Lord of the Rings. And I think Howard Shore is back for this, like he's scoring it.
Yes, he is.
Which is incredibly exciting because the Lord of the Rings soundtrack is one of the most beautiful scores I've heard in my life.
Yep.
I would definitely check out, there's some like video essays on why it's so impactful. And just, the music feels so nostalgic, and those movies, I mean, they're old-ish, but like they're not that old comparatively, but listening to the music makes me long for, a time and place I've never been to. So
you know what it is about the Lord of the Rings movies that like continually makes me come back to them? And we usually we didn't this year because we have the kids and it's like a little bit tougher to watch, 9.5 hours of movie. But what makes me always come back to them is there's something about those stories that are so pure, if you know what I mean. Like so much about it is about like brotherhood and standing up for one another and uniting for the common good. And it's like, it's cheesy in parts, like if you look at it from a distance, but it embraces itself and the message that they're trying to go forward. And I feel like we're in a time where a lot of action movies are very jaded about like heroism and what that means. And it's kind of like in the early 90s in comics when everything got focused around the anti-hero, and to be just a hero was kind of like lame. And I look back at Lord of the Rings and I don't know if those movies would be made today in the way that they were then. And
they really have a heart to them.
They do, and they're really beautiful. And you look at like just the cinematography is breathtaking to this day. And like some of the effects don't hold up as well, but considering they're 20 years old now,
which is wild,
it's absolutely wild. And I will continue to go back to them. And the soundtracks, like you mentioned,
same. And you're right about, the message they send. There really is something so pure, so heartwarming, wholesome about, the way, all the characters in that, face their demons, come together to unite to a common cause. They're better words than I can think of right now, but it's a phenomenal series of movies about, belief and never giving up and, overcoming adversity. I hate to, boil it down to the bare basics. But you know, it's an incredible trilogy of movies. The Hobbit, I know a lot of people are mixed on. And there's a reason why I don't go back to those as frequently as I do Lord of the Rings. It's hard to capture that kind of magic that they made with those films. So I hope at least the Amazon series does something to try and capture similar magic to, you know, the original film. So we shall see. But that's all we have for you today on the Cross-Check NHL Show. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure to follow us on your podcast platform of choice, from Apple to Odyssey to Spotify and YouTube, and rate and review us while you're at it. You can follow the pod at Cross-Check NHL on Twitter, me and Mary Clarke on Twitter, and Andrew at Andrew Berkshire on Twitter. Thanks for making the Cross-Check NHL Show your first listen every Tuesday and Friday. We'll be back on Tuesday with some more puck talk, but now make your second listen Locked On Bets. Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling.